where now petrol and diesel is approximately 214 and 242 shillings. That is unprecedented, and it came as a shocker to many Kenyans, basically because the government had previously announced that the current fuel products in Kenya have been waived from the higher standards that we already had, and they permitted a higher component of sulfur, meaning we ought to be having cheaper fuel in terms of landed cost than previously, and especially given that the fuel that Kenyans are consuming now is of much lesser quality than previously. It is also important for us to know that the VAT that was reduced by government last month has not been felt by Kenyans because, as we are all aware, VAT is calculated as a percentage of the landed cost. But it is the landed cost that has been increasing. And therefore, when the numerator has been increasing, what Kenyans are paying in terms of VAT has been a moving target. Therefore, that also needs to be revised. The other thing that is very important to note is that we have seen government playing games with the fuel prices, and especially political games, out of a very serious matter that we should be all concerned about. That we see EPRA releasing their Gazette notice, but every time now we have been seeing the government belatedly coming with some shenanigans of trying to reduce some components way after EPRA has given their notice. As we are all aware, fuel products, and especially diesel, is an ascendant component when it comes to production, when it comes to transportation, and basically the entire facets of the economy. And therefore, when you give signals of increasing, all the other components adjust upwards, and they are sticky. That is why it is not right for the government to again then come back and purport to give some more guidance way after fuel had been increased. We saw that last month, and we saw immediately fuel went up. The other components of the economy went up consequently, and especially transportation cost. But when the government tried to, or purported to waive some components like VAT, we never saw those prices coming down because economic parameters and pricing are sticky. They are sticky. Going up is very easy, but coming down is never that easy. So it's always good for coherence when it comes to giving the guidance of prices, and for the government to always sit down. The government is one. One arm of government should not pronounce this thing today, the other thing yesterday, the other thing tomorrow. That brings in a lot of confusion to the economy. And again, the intended gains are not realized because prices upwards are always sticky in terms of when there are adjustments. The other thing is that I have a proposal which we should follow as a country, and I'm giving this proposal because the current fuel prices adjustments and the cost of it is temporal. And all the other economies understand that this is a temporary situation. And therefore, any economy should be looking at not inflicting long-term crisis to the economy based on the current short-term decision making. So we have a choice to make as a country. Either we spend a little more money in terms of waivers and subsidies, and then we protect the economy going forward in the medium and long term, or then we become laissez-faire and we have a price to pay dearly in the medium and long term, economically speaking. The drastic fuel increment in terms of prices will hurt the economy of Kenya to tunes of hundreds of billions. But the amount we need to bring down the fuel prices is not even a fraction of that. It is too minute. And therefore, I believe that we should be looking at seeing how we can reduce the fuel prices now so that we arrest many other issues, including inflationary pressures that will be inevitable. And this is the proposal that I have, and which is easy. One, the amount Kenyans pay at the pump for distribution and margins of importers of fuel and retailers and wholesalers is around 22 shillings. I'm proposing that we reduce by 4 shillings. Wakipata shilingi 18 hawatafuga biashara. Kila mtu sasa lazima akaze mshipi. The second thing is that we must reduce our VAT further from the current 8% to 0. In the short term, we must exempt fuel products from VAT. And the third one is that we must do away with the road maintenance levy fund, Kenya shilling 7, that was added in the year 2024 by this government. I have gone further and tabulated the amount of money that Kenyans are going to save. And if we do those measures immediately, the fuel prices in terms of pump prices in Kenya will climb down to both of them below 190 shillings. That is diesel and petrol. Around 186 shillings for super petrol and 189 shillings for diesel. These issues, some of them need some involvement of parliament. And it is for that reason that I have already written to the clerk of the National Assembly of my intention to amend the VAT Act so that we exempt especially super petrol, diesel, and kerosene from VAT, and consequently make all those products VAT exempt and move them to the first schedule. The other thing is that I've already written to the National Assembly on the intention of amending the road maintenance levy fund by abolishing the 7 shillings that was added in the year 2024. Again, as I said before, this will give reprieve to Kenyans that the current diesel and super petrol prices should come down to around to below 190 for a liter of either. The other thing that maybe it is important for me to highlight, which is building up to that price, is also the subsidy. Diesel, as you saw in the circular, the added cost is higher. And for those prices to come to the ranges I'm talking about, we must also provision 5 billion Kenya shillings from the Fuel Stabilization Fund so that we reduce diesel by around 24 shillings. That is why the math is coming to around 189 for diesel. All those measures will stabilize our economy in terms of not have a very erratic inflationary pressures. And also we are going to have some stability in the medium and long term. Failure to do that, the price will be too high for our economy to bear. I also want to highlight 2 more things. One is that Kenyans are already complaining that the fuel products that are currently in the country seem to be adulterated diesel and adulterated with paraffin. Even when I sent this communication, I have received a lot of communication from Kenyans, clearly stating that the quality of fuel we have in Kenya, that clearly somebody is making a kill out of adulterating fuel products to make profit. I also want to request our leaders. This is not the time to make money out of the misery of Kenyans. I have been stating this and I want to repeat again. The G2G arrangement, Kenyans can now clearly see that it is a scam at best. And I want to state here again, the G2G arrangement is a kiosk for senior government officials The same people you see claiming to reduce this or that are the same people who are the owners of G2G. In fact, 75% of the imports of fuel benefit our leaders directly. I'm requesting our leaders, now it is time to tame your greed. Kenyans cannot accommodate global supply shocks and also accommodate your greed at the same time. One has to give way for the other, and you must give way. The greed of the G2G cabal must come to an end now, because Kenyans can now see that fuel in terms of global prices was lower in 2022, yet Kenyans were paying cheaper at the pump. And there was no G2G then. Now when there is G2G, which supposedly we are lied to that it has any benefit to Kenyans. When we have G2G, when we have cheaper global oil prices than 2022, prices in Kenya are unprecedented. Finally, I want to request my brothers and sisters from the media, do your analysis on the regional oil prices, and you realize that among our regional economies, Kenya is the highest in terms of fuel prices. Uganda, that uses our port, is selling both super petrol and diesel cheaper than Kenya now. Tanzania, they are selling cheaper. Ethiopia, super petrol and diesel is actually below 150 shillings for both. In Ethiopia, Rwanda is also cheaper than us. That landlord countries are now selling fuel products cheaper than us. And then, as usual, we come to face the people of Kenya and blame our road network. Who should actually be charging higher? The economy with a more vast road network, or the ones that need to catch up? I think it is the ones that need to catch up. So these reasons we keep giving to Kenyans, every time we evolve a lie to a bigger lie. Unfortunately, figures are not on the side of lies this time round. Kenyans are demanding that the government must do something about fuel prices. That the composition of taxes, levies, and margins, of course, you know, it's the same people in government who are taking off with it. That amount is close to 100 shillings per liter of super petrol and diesel. Because taxes and levies, we are talking about close to 75 shillings, and then the rest around 25 shillings in terms of distribution and margins. That the landed cost, for example, of super petrol is below 120 shillings. So the government cannot come and purport what we have seen some government officials purporting. Oh, global oil prices. We all understand that. You don't need to lecture us about that. We are talking about the close to 100 shillings in taxes and levies and margins. That one the government can do something about. And that is what we are demanding they must. Therefore, they must not frustrate my proposed amendments to the VAT Act and RMLF. And to my colleagues, the members of parliament, Kenyans will be watching who is on the side of Kenyans and who is against Kenyans. I'll actually initiate a process where members of parliament will sign either they support or they don't, so that Kenyans can clearly see who starts with them at this moment of crisis. Otherwise, thank you very much. Na ningetaka niseme kwa Kiswahili kwa ufupi. Felix, you wanted this to be close to? Okay. Nataka niseme kwa ufupi kwa Kiswahili. Wakenya wameona jana ya kwamba EPRA wametoa mwongozo wa vile bei ya mafuta itakuwa hapa Kenya. Na tukaona bei ya mafuta imeenda juu kupidukia. ya kwamba sasa petroli ni kama shilingi 214 na tumeona diesel imeenda over 240 shillings. Na tumesikiza watu katika serikali wakisema mambo ya global disruption, na Wakenya wanaelewa hiyo hata kuzidi wao. Lakini ni vizuri Wakenya waelewe ya kwamba katika lita moja kama ya petroli, shilingi kama 100 inaenda katika kodi na faida ya wale watu ambao wanahusika kwa biashara ya mafuta. Na hapo kuna kitu Kenya inaweza fanya na serikali inaweza fanya. Na ndio maana nimeandikia bunge yetu, the National Assembly, nikitaka kubadilisha ama kuamend our VAT Act ndio tupeleke ushuru wa VAT wa mafuta wa petroli, diesel na kerosene itoke vile iko katika 8%, tuipeleke 0, ile inaitwa VAT exempt. Na pia nimeandikia bunge nikitaka kuteremsha road maintenance levy fund kutoka shilingi 25 ile inatozwa kwa sasa, tuondoe shilingi 7 ndio Wakenya wapate nafuu. Na pia kuna pesa Wakenya huwa wanachagia wakati wowote wana consume mafuta Kenya, na kuna fund inaitwa Fuel Stabilization Fund, na katika hiyo fund iko pesa ya kutosha. Na ndio nataka niulize serikali watoe bilioni nyingine 5 iende katika kusubsidize diesel, na hiyo ita subsidize diesel kama shilingi 24. Tukifanya hayo those 3 things, ya kwamba kupeleka ushuru chini ya VAT, pili levies kupeleka chini levies ya road maintenance levy fund na shilingi 7 ambayo iliongezwa na hii serikali mwaka wa 2024, na kutoa subsidy ama nafuu ya bilioni nyingine 5 ambayo already iko, tutakuwa tumeteremsha bei ya mafuta, na petroli itagharimu wa Kenya na pia diesel below 190 shillings. Tumeona ya kwamba bei ya mafuta Kenya ikilinganishwa na zile nchi jirani, bei ya mafuta Kenya ndio iko juu zaidi. Kenya iko juu ya Uganda, na mnajua petroli yote ama mafuta yote ya Uganda inapitia katika bahari yetu ama poti yetu. Hapa Kenya pia bei ya mafuta iko juu kuliko Tanzania, kuliko Rwanda na kuliko Ethiopia. Na kwa hivyo hii Kiingereza mingi tunapewa na viongozi, mambo ya road network na ingine, hiyo yote tunaelewa. Ile tatujaelewa ni kwamba kwa nini mafuta ilikuwa global prices ilikuwa juu mwaka wa 2022, ilikuwa juu kuliko sasa, na bei ya mafuta sasa iko juu Kenya sasa kuliko 2022. Hiyo ndio Wakenya hawaelewi. Lakini ndio Wakenya waelewe, ni vizuri wajue ya kwamba hii mpango tunaelezwa ya G2G, hiyo ni biashara na ni kiosk ya viongozi hapa Kenya. Nataka niulize viongozi wetu Wakenya, wakati Wakenya wanalia wakilipa nauri ya juu, inflation I'm sure itaenda juu mwezi wa Mei. Wakenya wakilia ati viongozi wetu wanasherekea faida. What kind of greed is that? Ya kwamba viongozi wamechaguliwa waongoze Kenya, ndio wenyewe wanaleta mafuta ya G2G hapa Kenya, na hiyo shilingi 6 ya margin ya importer inaenda kwa viongozi wetu wa hapa nchini Kenya. They must be very ashamed of themselves that you are elected to lead, but on the contrary wanaona ni vizuri wafanye biashara na mafuta. Walifaidika wakati mafuta ilikuwa bei ya chini, na sasa pia wanataka waendelee kufaidika Wakenya wakati Wakenya wanalia wakinunua mafuta. Let us put our greed down, dear leaders. Kama lazima utengeneze pesa, tafadhali tuondoe hii ulafi katika hii mambo ya mafuta. Na ya mwisho Hii yote tunaona wakati already Kenya imeagiza ya kwamba quality ya chini ya mafuta inaweza sasa kuwa inauzwa hapa Kenya. Wakenya walifikiria tukiteremsha quality pengine hata bei itateremka. Sasa Wakenya wanalia mara mbili, wanalia kwa bei ya juu na wanalia kwa gari zao kuharibika kwa vile sasa mafuta iko Kenya ni ya quality ya chini. Ni vibaya sana na ni lazima serikali wafanye kitu, and we are giving them a chance. Lazima mfanye kitu na sio tafadhali. Failure to that, we are going to communicate to Kenyans the next course of action, because we cannot continue kuangalia watu wachache wakiumiza wa Kenya, na especially when their hearts are not clean, especially when them themselves are involved in fuel business and especially in importation.
Wengi wa Wakenya mheshimiwa, wangependa kufahamu hawa ambao unawataja, unasema wanahusika na wanafaidika pakubwa katika biashara ya mafuta. Mbona usiwataje mapema?
Unajua, mimi naonanga nyinyi journalists mkifanya story mzuri sana, inaitwa investigative stories. Na mnafaa mnishukuru kwa kuwapea a very clear shot. Yaani goalkeeper ameondolewa, umeambiwa funga bao. Watu wanahusika na mambo ya mafuta, hata nikiwaangalia uso mnajua ni nani. Na hao watu hao peke yao ndio wameenda Turkana. Ile mafuta tulikuwa tunafikiria ni ya kufaidi watu wa Turkana na wa Kenya, pia huko wameenda na wakaiba yote, wakanyakua. Sasa mafuta ya Turkana ni mali ya hao watu tu wanahusika na G2G, na hao watu tu ndio mtaona saa ingine kwa news wakiwachekesha hapa na pale na mambo mengi ambayo haina manufaa kwa wananchi wa Kenya. Yes. Kumbe mnaelewa mambo yote. Yes. I said that and I'll actually be giving you. Ni vizuri kuuliza. Yes.
You said you contact Kenyans.
Yeah.
Before you contact Kenyans, are you taking these things to parliament directly?
No. Ni vizuri aulize tafadhali. Yes. Ndugu yangu, nilisema ya kwamba already nishaandikia bunge na nitawapea barua ya kwamba nataka kuamend the VAT Act Cap 476 ambayo itateremsha VAT hapa Kenya from 8% to 0, making it tax exempt, especially in the medium term. Na ni vizuri niseme, mimi naelewa kama mwanauchumi ya kwamba Kenya inahitaji hizi fedha za VAT. Kenya needs these revenues of VAT. And the more the reason, I am proposing this as a short-term intermediary measure, so that at least tugoje mambo stabilize, ndio tena Kenya inaweza endelea kucollect your revenue. Lakini in the meantime, we have to do a trade-off. Is either we give in to some money and especially subsidy and reduce VAT and RMLF. Either we do that, which is less costly, or then we let the economy move into a crisis by escalating and especially diesel prices to levels that are unprecedented, and especially given that diesel is an ascendant input in every production that we do in this country. So nishaandika hiyo barua na tutakuwa tunafanya hiyo marekebisho.
I have a question.
Yeah.
How do you connect the current situation with now the proposals that are in the finance bill and the effect thereof in the economy?
what we actually thought, and I remember, Gojiri, you asked me that there is a question you asked some time back about this proposal of pay, because all that this is doing is to raid into the pockets of Kenyans. So this is raiding, because anywhere you pay higher prices for consumption, your pocket is getting raided. On the other side, Kenyans expected that the government will shape up and at least reduce pay as they had purported to do. Unfortunately, they are developing cold feet, but we'll do our best in parliament to make sure that that is done. So there is a lot of correlations, and especially when it comes to raiding the pockets of Kenyans. Yeah.
And I do understand that issue also is taken directly to the government.
Yes.
This is all about the future. But then what concrete assurance would you give them, keeping in mind that we're used to such conversations just ending here,
Yeah.
there's political boardrooms, and nothing gets to be done in the long term. Then how would you speak to the government who be watching you this afternoon?
That's a very good question. And I will need assistance of Kenyans in moving these amendments. Because what usually happens when we have these kind of progressive amendments, the proponents of government are called to sabotage it. And that is why, beyond moving it on the floor, I'll also be needing the members of parliament to sign whether they are in support or not. And Kenyans must force all the leaders to support these progressive amendments, because it is for the benefit of everyone, including those who may be wanting to not to support it.
Already the Matatu owners and stakeholders are calling for already a strike. You've hinted that you want to engage Kenyans on the next course of action. Would you be part of this next course of action that the Matatu calling for the street demonstrations to push for the same, including pushing for your letter to the speaker and the clerk to have the fuel exempt?
Leto, I think every Kenyan is feeling the pinch. And I'm sure every other Kenyan, all the 60 million of us, if they had an opportunity to do what I'm doing, today they would all do it. And that is why we come out to do exactly this as the representatives of the people. Any measure that every sector of the economy is taking is welcome. Because as Kenyans have realized, there is something peculiarly incompetent about this government. For example, you saw last month, we had done guidances and press conferences over and over, offering freely our opinions, which they ended up doing to some part. But they had to wait for last minute. Even this, I'm requesting them, whether you are going to reduce fuel prices or not is not on the table. You must reduce fuel prices. It is a matter of when. So don't buy time, my friends. Act to the point where you can act before Kenyans push you to act and you'll be in a corner. So hawa watu wa serikali saa ingine wanakausha kichwa, lakini unakausia nani kichwa? Wakenya wagani unakausia kichwa sasa? Muite mkutano ya dharura, murainisha wabunge pale bunge wa support hizi amendments, kwa sababu Wakenya wanaelewa bunge sasa ni mtu mmoja anapiga simu, maneno inafanyika. So huyo mtu mmoja anampea nafasi, pigia watu yako simu huko bunge, they must support these amendments, and you are not begging, na sio tafadhali, because in the meantime you have to lower fuel prices. We goja bana, mbona unakimbia sana Leto? Ninaona mmetosheka ama mmemwizwa na mafuta namna hiyo.
Tunaenda maandamano.
No, we are going to announce what to do. Yes. Okay, nimalize. Yeah, so wacha niseme tu kwa ufupi sana so that we don't keep the others waiting. Wabere ni gucokia ngatho ni undu wa guka kwanyu. Na Akenya ni marakarite muno ni undu wa kuona muthenya wa ira ati thirikari gutire handu irameciria ati thirikari irenda kuongerera kana ni irongereire already bei ya maguta ati riu petrol yumage ciringi 214 na diesel makiria ma ciringi 242. Iyo niyo bei kana kuongererwo kwa bei ya maguta na njira ria nene muno tuonete kwa kahinda karia tukoretwo April kiruta wira ucio. Na ni wega Kenya mamenye bei ya maguta Kenya niyo iguru muno kuringithania na mabururi maria maturigiceirie. Bei ya maguta Kenya iguru gukira Uganda, na Uganda maguta mao mothe mageraga guku Kenya. Bei ya maguta iguru Kenya gukira Tanzania, gukira Rwanda, gukira Ethiopia na mabururi maria mangi mothe nginya matari iria ya kurehe maguta na meri. Ni tondu maguta Kenya matiri goro ni undu wa ati maundu macio turerwo ma maguta thiine wa thi. Ni ati hakuhi ciringi 100 riria Akenya marariha maguta-ini ni magoti na faida iria irariyo ni aria makoretwo kana makoragwo biashara-ini ya maguta. Makiria ma kana besa ta ciringi 75 ni magoti na ingi kindu 25 ni distribution margins kana faida iria ikoragwo ikiheo aria marahusika na biashara ya maguta. Na ni undu wa gitumi kiu ndiraheana mendekithia matatu maria makurehe bei ya maguta thi na niguo Akenya matige kugirika. Undu wa mbere ni nyandikiire bunge na ndirenda tunyihie VAT Kenya kuma 8% ithie 0 kana igoti ria VAT kare indo ciothe kana fuel products diesel, petrol na kerosene. Undu ucio ungi ni ndirenda thirikari irute ciringi bilioni 5 maheane subsidy thiini wa diesel niguo diesel igiagie raithi. Undu ucio ungi ni ati no nginya tweherie igoti riongereirwo ni thirikari ritagwo Road Maintenance Levy Fund riongereirwo ria ciringi 7 mwaka wa 2024 no nginya rieherio riu tondu Akenya matingithie na mbere na gukua murigo uyu munene uguo. Na yo faida ya andu aria makoragwo makihusika na maundu ma maguta meherie ciringi 4 hari mbeca iria ni faida yao, ni tondu gaka ti kahinda kandu gukenerera faida riria Akenya aria angi maragirika. Na tweka maundu macio ni tukurehe bei ya maguta thi. In fact mangika maundu macio diesel na ni propose ite uhoro ucio diesel igakorwo kiuma ciringi 187. Sorry, super petrol igakorwo kiuma ciringi 187 nayo diesel igakorwo kiuma ciringi 189. Na maundu maya already ni nyandikiire bunge maria marabatarania gucenjio kwa watho niguo twambiririe mitaratara ya gucenjia watho wa kurehe bei ya maguta thi tondu twarekereria maguta magie na bei ino ya iguru muturire ni ukurituhira andu aingi muno na andu a Kenya oriria aingi ao already methi riu ningi marenda gukinyiririo thi makiria ni thirikari na tutigwitikira uhoro ucio hanike. Na wa muico uhoro uyu twiragwo wa G2G wa andu kurehe maguta kuma Saudi Arabia na United Arab Emirates. Akenya ni wega mamenye ino ni biashara ya nene ya bururi na nio mararia faida riria andu a Kenya mararia thina. Gwenda kuria tongoria itu gaka ti kahinda kandu kuiga nda ciao mbere, no nginya mweherie ukoroku maundu-ini maya ma maguta ati ciringi 6 iria Mukenya arariha iretwo ati import margin nĩ mbeca irathiĩ mũhuko wa atongoria bũrũri ũyũ wa Kenya. No nginya manyihanyihie muoyo ũndũ ũcio, tondũ gaka rĩu ti kahinda ga kwĩyenda, nĩ kahinda ga gũthaitĩra andũ a Kenya, tondũ nĩ kahinda materĩgĩte kuona hĩndĩ ĩngĩ. Erokamano, tuende hapo.
Yes, tuende.